Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbong. Growing up, my mom was a nurse in the ER, and sometimes when she needed to write a report or something, she'd call me and whisper like, "Hey, Andrew, how do you say XYZ in English?" And I'd talk her through on what to write, tell her I had homework to do, and then go back to playing Crash Bandicoot or something. That experience of being the voice for your non-English speaking parents is a pretty universal one among kids of immigrants. And it's the plot of the new picture book titled The Interpreter, written by Olivia Abtahi. She spoke with Here and Now Scott Tong about how kids are filling the role that's actually a job that grown adults are paid to do and are somehow still doing it while doing regular kid stuff. And it can sometimes be too much. That's coming up.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from Cunard, inviting you to take in the sounds of Alaska. Relax on spacious decks with 360-degree views as you cruise through Glacier Bay National Park. Hear the call of a bald eagle or the song of a humpback whale as you take in the beauty of Alaska's snow-capped mountains from your own private balcony. More at cunard.com/Alaska.
Have you ever been in a restaurant or, waiting at the car dealership, at the doctor's office, and notice it's not the adults always speaking to the professionals, but instead one of their children? Well, the U.S. Census Bureau says about 11 million children in America act as interpreters and translators for their families. This is because, of course, of language barriers. Olivia Abtahi explores this theme of kid translators and interpreters. In her new picture book debut, the book for children is called The Interpreter, and it's out today. Olivia, welcome to Here and Now.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. Pleasure to be here.
Good to have you. Congratulations on this project. This book follows Cecilia, a young girl who serves as an interpreter for her Spanish-speaking parents. Just tell us briefly what her job is for her family. What does she have to do?
Yeah, Cecilia is an interpreter where she's translating English to Spanish for her parents and the rest of her family. So she is basically having what is a very adult job in the body of a child.
Yeah, and she wears a suit when she's doing her job in the book, a green suit with a tie, which I love. All right, do you have a couple pages you can read from?
Yeah, for sure. I'll start at the beginning. Some kids had one job, to be a kid. Cecilia worked two.
And let me pause you and explain that the picture is of a girl with a suit and a tie, and she's multitasking. She's pouring a cup of coffee. She's got food in her mouth. She has these stickies. She has all these things she needs to do. All right, page turn. Go ahead.
Nobody talked about Cecilia's second job. The intercom says, "Cecilia, you're up." They didn't even acknowledge it. That's how special it was. "It's nice to meet you, Cecilia," says a doctor on the page. The doctor says, "This baby is very sick. It's not going to be an easy recovery. I need you to explain the treatment to her parents." Cecilia says, "La bebé está enferma y va a necesitar medicamento." On the next page, we see Cecilia at the DMV, and it says, "Cecilia went to all kinds of grown-up places her classmates had never been." "No smiling," says a DMV attendant to her father. "Sin sonrisa," says Cecilia. Here we cut to an accountant. "Did you include all the receipts?" Cecilia says, "Incluyó todos los recibos?" Next, at the mechanic, a mechanic asks, "When was the last time you had an oil change?" "Cuándo fue el último cambio de aceite?" Cecilia used to have a coworker, but he got promoted.
Yeah. No, that's a good place to pause and talk about this. Clearly, in all these walks of life, she has to be an interpreter. And I gather this is somewhat based on your own experience. Your parents spoke English when your family came to this country, but they needed kind of help with cultural translation. Was that your experience?
That's right, Scott. My dad is originally from Iran, and my mom is originally from Argentina. And even though the two learned English in school, and they eventually learned Spanish together, that's the language that they speak with each other as well, there were still a lot of cultural things between all three of the languages our household had that definitely needed a little bit more clarification.
Yeah, I wonder if you have an example that you remember, because some of it is just kind of avoiding awkward moments, yeah?
Oh my gosh, so many, Scott. The first one that comes to mind is once when I was a Girl Scout, we were going on a camping trip and there was a list of things to bring. And, you know, my parents didn't really grow up camping. Like my mom, when she wanted to go camping back in Argentina, would go hitchhiking up, you know, to the Amazon and like stay in a farmer's tobacco field. Like that's how she would camp with her friends. And, you know, my dad, he grew up, his dad was a medic with the army, so they would go around to villages in Iran to the point where some of these villages had never seen a car before. So villagers would leave hay in front of the car at night, thinking that the car had to eat food. So they were already very, you know, rural situations. So when it came to camping, for me, it was very exotic. And on the list was pajamas. And my mom was so proud. She bought me, you know, the tin cup, the metal utensils, the sleeping bag, and the pajamas. And I rolled up to this cabin so thrilled to like show off my new Looney Tunes pajamas. And when it came time to change, I basically had what's we would now call a nightgown or a dressing gown. And the other troop leaders looked at me like, sweetie, we meant like long johns or thermals. You know, we're going to need to cobble together something for you. Yeah. And so like Cecilia in the book, I'm wearing this very oversized set of adult sweatpants for the rest of the camping trip. But that was just a moment where, you know, they never would have known, and they know what pajamas are. They just didn't realize that camping pajamas are different.
Yeah, right. I mean, it is cultural interpretation, you know. That's kind of at the center of this. In your book, your kid's book, there's a moment where Cecilia, the main character, is counted on to do all these adult things, and then she explodes in frustration, right? She just kind of screams at the world, I just want to live my life as a kid. I don't want to do this. What is she telling us? What is she telling the world, the reader, at that moment?
Cecilia is telling the world that this is too much. This is a full-time job for adults. I know adult interpreters, and I'm really lucky to have grown up with a ton growing up in the DC area who were interpreters for the State Department, and it is a full-time job. And here we're asking children to take on this full-time job while they are also having the very real job of being a kid and going to school and having fun and having these new experiences and joyful moments in their life. And I think Cecilia is at a point where she can't take it anymore, and it's just too much.
Yeah. And you've talked about the anxiety and in some cases the shame and guilt that these children face. Talk a little bit more about that.
Oh my gosh, there's so much shame and guilt. Having parents who don't speak English, or like, you know, good American English, if you will, can definitely give you a lot of anxiety. And something that I think a lot of children can relate to is just the school bake sale. Just those two words, bake sale, like strike fear into our hearts. And growing up, it was like, you know, your parents would say, okay, we'll go pick up something from the store. And it's like, well, no, like, you know, as the kid, as an American kid, it needs to be something homemade. Okay, well, then I'll make them something from our country. I'll make them shirini, an Iranian sweet. Well, no, it needs to be cupcakes or brownies or cookies. And you just go through it, and the shame of explaining that there's some parts of the culture that you don't understand and that need to be done a certain way. And for Cecilia, you know, we see throughout the book that it really weighs on her. And she wears a green suit throughout the book. In the beginning, it's a little oversized. And
it's huge on her, yes.
Yeah, it's huge on her. It's too big. She's trying to walk in shoes that are too big for her, literally. And it's a lot for a very young person.
Yeah. Well, in the end, she and her family kind of grow into the right relationship. She gets help from other family members. And in the end, her suit is just the right size. Olivia, it's hard to imagine a 7-year-old, pretty young child having to explain a medical diagnosis, right, to an adult at an appointment, or a 10-year-old on the phone with the power company going over a bill. I mean, these are the things you show us in the book. But this, of course, is a reality for so many children in immigrant families. You said that there's a sense of filial piety, this duty to the family many of these children have. Can you talk about that duty?
Yeah, for a lot of children of immigrants, just having parents who came to the United States to give us a better life gives us such a sense of duty and of feeling like we owe our parents everything. And in a sense, we really do. This country has so many opportunities, that also can kind of be toxic sometimes, where you have children in these moments who are working themselves really hard to help them in these moments, to be on the phone with the power company, like you said, to kind of grease the wheels of every interaction that their parents are going to have to make sure that it's smooth. And this filial piety, this sense of obligation to parents, is something that a lot of first-gen kids in this country face.
Yeah. And I want to ask you about, how you tried to present the parents in this book. I've been there too myself, right? Trying to explain, what high school sports is, right? To Chinese parents who don't really have a concept of it, and also not wanting them to be embarrassed, right? I don't want to be embarrassed myself, and also not embarrass them in front of whoever. Did you also think about that as you were writing this book?
Absolutely, Scott. And I really wanted to give these parents dignity. These are great parents in the book. These are not bad parents. They're a wonderful mother and father, and they just need a little help. But that little help can add up, right? So these parents aren't clueless. They know what's going on, but they just need that extra push, for some of these cultural and language moments. And I love that the illustrations also portray these parents as great people. They are moving through the world with a sense of agency, even though they need to rely on their daughter for help. And that was just really important to me, because this isn't just a book for kids in this situation, it's for the parents as well.
Well, we're talking about the new picture book, children's book. It's called The Interpreter, out today, and the author is Olivia Abtahi. It's a picture book about the translation, interpretation duties children of immigrant families sometimes take up. And we should note that the illustrator is Monica Arnaldo. Olivia, thanks so much.
Thank you, Scott.
This message comes from Schwab. At Schwab, how you invest is your choice, not theirs. That's why when it comes to managing your wealth, Schwab gives you more choices. You can invest and trade on your own. Plus, get advice and more comprehensive wealth solutions to help meet your unique needs. With award-winning service, low costs, and transparent advice, you can manage your wealth your way at Schwab. Visit schwab.com to learn more.
This message comes from Best Western Hotels and Resorts. If you love a good podcast, then you must love a good story. And the best stories start with a great trip. That's where Best Western comes in. Whether you've been planning a getaway for weeks or just got the itch to go, Best Western has you covered with over 4,000 hotels worldwide. Wherever your story takes you, make it memorable. Life's a trip. Make the most of it at bestwestern.com. This message comes from Charles Schwab. When it comes to managing your wealth, Schwab gives you more choices, like full-service wealth management and advice when you need it. You can also invest on your own and trade on Think or Swim. Visit schwab.com to learn more.